Hello, friends. Welcome to the Best Mom Ever Parenting Teens podcast, your place to get the tools and strategies you need to have a close and trusting relationship with your kids. Thanks for listening. We are glad you're here. Welcome, everyone, to the Best Mom Ever podcast. I'm Allison. I may have changed the name by the time you hear this recording, but here we are. Welcome, welcome. I get to interview Joanne Holbrook today, and I'm super excited about that. And we are going to talk about the power of storytelling and how it relates to our role as parents and lots of other great things. Joanne Holbrook is a mother of two and spouse to a U.S. Army officer. She raised her family in South Africa, England, Germany, Australia, and the United States. As a South African, she combined her world travels that came with a military lifestyle, including her 25 years teaching in performing arts schools, has allowed Joanne to observe culture and parenting from multiple international perspectives with a broader worldview. She is the author of the 3-time award-winning book, Your Passport to Parenting, which has been translated into multiple languages. She is a professional keynote speaker, parenting coach, and entrepreneur who shares parenting stories to help build positive, values-based families worldwide. She is looking forward to sharing parenting positivity with you all today. Welcome, Joanne. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
Can you please tell us a little about your travels and journey and how you came into the space of supporting parents through this international lens?
Yeah, well, I'm originally South African. Get that out the way because everyone wonders where the accent's from. So I'm South African originally, and I, like most South Africans, went on a pilgrimage to England, as we did in those days. And I met my husband, who is in the US Army. He was stationed in Germany. And that's sort of where everything started. We got married and we started moving. We were in Germany, we moved to North Carolina, then to Kansas, then to Washington, then to England, then to Germany, then to Virginia, then to Australia, and now we're in Hawaii. So every time we moved, and we were having children at the time and everything else, I was always the foreigner wherever I went. And whatever country you live in, you have to learn their culture to be able to take your kids to school, go to the shop, and everything like that. And I really started feeling like I wasn't getting it. I was always 10 steps behind everybody else. So what I started doing was I started leaning on my community a little bit more. And I started asking the moms around me, hey, how does this work? How does that work? And probably a lot more than a mom who didn't need that, I would ask. And I started finding that moms are really cool. Like they have so much great information. And if you take moms from different cultures, they have even more amazing different information. So I started gathering all these little tools and little things to make me feel a little bit more settled in my parenting. And slowly, I started to see the value in this. And I started looking for parents who had successful parenting journeys. And I'd find people from all over the world. I'd find different cultures. I'd find different ages. And I would go and interview these people and say, what was the best thing you did? Looking back, what did you do right? And slowly, I found these stories that changed my parenting, made me happier, made me less stressed, less competitive, less hard on myself, all just because these amazing people shared. And slowly, I decided to write these stories down. And then I met a publisher who was like, let's do it. Let's write these down. It's never been done before. So I wrote the book, Your Passport to Parenting. And it has 111 lessons, and there are 11 countries in the book. So it really is a full book of different ways of parenting. And I like to believe that I've finally proven that there's more than one way to be a good parent.
That's incredible and really empowering too, because I think we try so hard to hit the mark, but it's different for everyone.
It's completely different for everyone. And I think that a lot of the time, if you live in the same space, in the same place, which I did for 26 years, so I know how it feels to live in one place. You only have the people around you who are in your same culture, who are in your same values and everything like that. And you don't get to hear how somebody else does it, which might be better for you. So to have someone come in and go, hey, here's 10 other options that are good, 10 other positive things, 10 other ways to do it. And if one of those feel good, you can implement them in your life. You don't have to listen to your mom and your sister-in-law and your neighbor. You can absolutely make your home your space. And that's really what I do with a lot of parents now is I share that, you get to decide how you want to do things.
That's really important. We were speaking earlier about choosing to be in this space with the moms. And I've made a similar choice in my coaching because of my background in pediatric therapy, seeing how much coaching parents impacts my clients' outcomes. So I choose to work with moms also because the way that we experience parenting as moms is unique from how dads experience it. Can we explore a little bit into your choice specifically to support moms in this parenting community?
Yeah, I think I relate better to moms, although I do have a lot of dads who come to me too. There's a lot of single dads that come to me and go, I need to be mom too. So I do support dads who reach out and go, I want to give them what they're missing or maybe what they don't have right now. So there are dads out there who also need support. But for moms, I relate to them better. And I think that I like to build women. I love connecting people. I love to be a connector and someone who really supports women. So for me, that's just naturally where I've been drawn. But I'm definitely not opposed to helping moms. And the other thing that I think needs help out there is parents to parent on the same page. A lot of the time they struggle, even if they're separated or divorced, or even if they're living in the same home, there's often that they need someone to go, hey, have you thought about this? How do you want your child to look in the future? If you have the same common goal as a parent and you have the same goal of what you want for your kids, how the mom gets there and how the dad gets there is actually irrelevant as long as you both get there, and then you can sort of be easier on each other and know that we have this common goal. I think that that's also important for homes, and every home's different. Every home's unique. You can never say that there's one way. Absolutely not.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Our experience colors so much about how, what our priorities are and what our goals become, and what's true for us, even in one moment or period of our child's development, may seem less important at a different time. So just being in that comfort space of kind of shifting where our priorities are, just being somewhat flexible in how we get to the end goal. So you wrote your passport to parenting, and you have pulled out some of your favorite themes. How we're looking at our children, first bringing the love, and then bringing whatever issue or challenge we might want to bring up. And then you also talk about adult time, which is somewhat influenced by your experience in Germany. And then you talk about stories as a foundation of self-worth, and that comes from your travels and your experience in all these different places. Can you tell us a story about your parenting or a time when you learned some essential skills relevant to your parenting experience?
Absolutely. So there's one that always sticks out in my head because when I moved to the UK with a 3 and a 5-year-old, we landed up living in the Cotswolds, and we lived on a farm, and my landlord was the farmer's wife kind of thing. She was a lot more than that. But it was really an amazing experience. If you think about Downton Abbey, but shrunk a little bit, the big house. It had the round driveway and it had all the barns all over the farm. And it was amazing. And they had converted all the old barns into these beautiful homes. And we got to live in one of the homes that used to be the old farm's granary. It was called the granary. They had an active dairy farm. They had workers on the farm. Their kids worked on the farm. It was really like an amazing place to live. And every Sunday, the farmer's wife would invite everyone on the farm for a Sunday roast. And I remember when we started doing this, I would watch her and her children. They were all grown. And I remember seeing how they interacted with each other. And I couldn't understand what I was seeing. I couldn't understand. It was more what I was feeling was the way they spoke to each other, the way the kids spoke to their mom. And they were sort of 19, 20, 21 around that age. And I went home one day and I said to my husband, I don't know what we just saw, but I want that. So being in the UK, I did the typical thing and I invited her over for tea. And I asked her, a couple questions about her parenting because she was just such a solid mom to adult children. And, we have adult children longer than we're going to have young children. So for me, it was, well, what adult children am I raising? And she told me something that actually was one of the catalysts to me going and researching other parents around the world. And she was also a magistrate. And she would go to court in the day and she'd come home when her kids were young and they'd sit at the dinner table and she'd say, she'd think to herself, well, I need to talk about drugs at schools. I need to talk about drugs and all of this. But she wouldn't sit and go, you guys mustn't take drugs. And this is why. She said, because the minute you tell a child a lecture, they're out the door or they're thinking, where's the nearest exit? Or they're like, when is this going to be over? When is this going to be over? So they never actually listen to you lecturing them. And she said, never lecture, tell a story. And what she would do is she would say, hey, did you hear what happened in court today? Oh, I'm not going to share. Actually, don't worry about it. I'm not going to tell you. And all of a sudden, she had 3 kids. They were like, what, mom? And she's like, no, it's inappropriate. I shouldn't share this with you. And they were like, and she would then say, well, a kid came in. He was 16 years old. He was selling drugs at school. And all of a sudden, they asked her the questions. She didn't have to lecture. They asked her all the questions and she would interject with the story. She would tell them what happened, how it happened, and the consequences that happened to him. And she said she started using this tool with her family and she'd never lectured them. She said to the point that even through their teen years, their friends would come to her with questions because they knew she wouldn't lecture. So you can use this tool anytime and you just tell a story and you had a life before your kids were, older or born. So, use your own stories, use your own things. If things come up in the news, you can easily go, hey, did you hear what happened on the news today? My daughter's a teenager now and she's trying to sign up for colleges and everything else. We heard a story the other day of a friend whose daughter was at a party. It was raided. She was caught holding alcohol and she had just been accepted into a nursing college with a full scholarship and the scholarship was revoked and she was kicked out of the school because she had now been, she had this record. So all I had to do was tell my daughter that story. I didn't have to lecture her on drinking underage and all of that. I just told her the story because I know how important it is for her to get into a good college. So she's like, oh my gosh, that seriously happened. So it's just about telling stories instead of lecturing. And it can be really hard to switch that as a parent. You have to train yourself how not to lecture, but to find a story somehow to reach your point and show a consequence.
So important. And this phenomenon that you're talking about where the teen or the tween will just completely stop listening. They're just not there with you. Like you can try, but once they've decided that they're not interested in what you have to share, it's not going in.
They're not interested. No, but you have to be fun and exciting too. Otherwise they're not going to listen to you. So, and stories is how we all learn and they'll remember a story as well. So when they're in that situation that you're warning them about, they're not going to remember the bullet points that you're giving them. They're going to remember a story that you associated with that lesson and consequence.
Mm-hmm. And then stories are so emotional and then they're tied with learning. So you're talking about like permanent life lessons for kids, right? I mean, not just like, okay, I hope that they remember this when they get home from school, but like they'll remember the story for a really long time and it'll be in there, right?
They will. And I think a lot of parents also do a one and done. I've spoken about this, I'm done. You have to find multiple stories of the same subject because one of them is only going to stick, not all 10, and you don't know which one. So you always have to be seeking as a mom, the news, listening to people, remembering how it felt to be a child, all of that. So it's really important to find the story. When I was trying to teach my kids the importance of looking both ways across the street, instead of saying to them, you have to be careful and and all that, I said, you know why I'm really worried about you crossing the street? And I'd be like, why, mommy? And I said, because when I was in elementary school, we had a major road outside our school, and a boy got knocked over and died. And it broke the school, it broke the parents, it broke his brother who was also in the school. I said, and I don't want that for you. And all of a sudden it was real. Oh, that's why mom is so hectic about this. So, it's a matter of sharing your own stories and letting them into who you were as a person too. You do understand maybe a little bit more than they think you do.
Oh my gosh. Can I share a story? Because that brought up a story for me, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit lighter, actually. But so I live on this busy road. And when we first moved here, and it's supposed to be a neighborhood, but everyone drives crazy on it. So, I'm here and I have this 24-month-old at the time, and he has no fear of this road because the most of the time there's no cars on it, whatever. But like every once in a while, somebody will come by going like 45. And so like I'm terrified of this road and like he has no fear of it. And I'm just like trying to solve it. Well, one of these days, our chicken actually got run over by a car. And I ended up like, well, what am I going to do with this chicken? So I end up like skinning it, which is like a whole other ridiculous thing. But he's asking me, he's like, Mommy, why are you hurting the chicken? I'm like, well, I'm not hurting the chicken. She already died. And then he was like, the car hurt the chicken. I was like, the car did hurt the chicken. That's why Mama wants you to not be in the road. And that actually did shift to where I was no longer having to have all these battles with him to like try to keep him out of the road. That made an impression. It was like so real. So
Yeah, because it's real. It's not just don't do it. I think a lot of parents get stuck in the to-do list, and it's not their fault. There's just so much to teach them. And it's a bit of a pressure. And it's like, I have to get through all these points before they, go on to the next phase. And it becomes a pressure. But we just have to slow down and talk, and tell a story.
And that's so easy too. It's so much less pressure to share a story than to get through all of our bullet points.
And then they ask questions. And that's where the real magic happens, is when they ask you questions about things. And you didn't have to tell them, just answered the question.
And I'm super excited to talk more about stories, but I do want to come back to your 3 favorite themes from your passport to parenting. So let's talk about how we're looking at our children and first bringing the love and then bringing whatever issue we have. So I'm super excited about hearing you dig into this. That this feels like it's going to be super profound. So can you start with that one a little bit for us?
Well, this is what I tell parents. If you want to change something in your home today, right now, in the next 1 minute, just do this. It's like the easiest thing you can do. It takes no energy, no effort, nothing. And it was actually brought to me by Toni Morrison when I watched her on Oprah. And back when the Oprah was on 4:00 in the afternoon, it was my sacred time as a mom with littlies. And I was very stressed at the time. My husband was deployed for a year in Iraq. There was so much going on in our lives at that time. I was very heavy in my energy. And I listened to her, and she said, every time a child walks into the room, you need to light up, because that's what they're looking for. That's what they need from you. And I was like, oh, and I realized that moment that I was definitely very like, what are you wearing kind of thing, instead of like, hey, my love, what are you wearing? You look awful. So it's first give them the look they need, and then deal with life. On the way to school, when they come downstairs and they look like they just woke up and they look like they're in their pajamas, and you're like, you're not going to school in that. Hold back on that comment, hold back on that facial expression, and first look at them like, good morning, my love. How are you? And then just give them that feeling. Because another thing that she said was, how you look at your child is eventually how they see themselves. So if you look at them with a frown and an angry, they're going to be like, oh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me? So you just eliminate that immediately. And you just, every time they walk in the room, or you fetch them from school, or they wake up in the morning, or anything like that, you just give them a bright, happy smile. And it's very honest, because you love your child. You want your child to feel loved. So, you let it come through your eyes, you let them feel it as well, sort of broadcast that feeling to them. And then you go, get back upstairs. You're not going to school like that. So, it's really is so easy to do, but it's just a little switch of just a pause, don't react, just go. Just show them how much you love them. So that's always the one thing that I share is, I always say, light up like a Christmas tree every time you see your kid, because that's really easy to remember. To like, oh, the lights are on, kind of thing. So that's definitely the easiest thing you can do in your home right now, and it will change the vibe. I've had parents email me and go, okay, yeah, that's what they needed.
Yes. Oh, it's so important that because you're building that foundation, especially for our teens. They're so self-conscious. They're thinking about how they look, even if they do look terrible. They're thinking about how they smell. They're thinking about how they're perceived by other people, by the world. And so you're first creating that home for them. Like, I've got you. You pick them up from school. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah. And you're the only one who can give them that. So why wouldn't you? My daughter comes in the room sometimes and she just stares at me. She just gives me this like quiet stare. And I know that all she wants is me to go, hey, she needs that. They crave it eventually. And it's so easy. It's so easy to do. Mhm.
So powerful. And then I think too, like you were talking about how stressed you were at the time, it's so easy for us to get caught in our own stressors and the things we have going on in our lives and the things that are bringing us down. And we want to make sure that our children know that they are not what's bringing us down. That, like, first and foremost, like, our children want us to be happy that they're there. And
Yeah,
so
that's a massive point that you bring up, because they will always blame themselves for mom's bad energy vibe. They will always blame that. If anything happens, they'll go, Mom, have I done something wrong? Or if they don't say that, they're like, what have I done wrong? They don't understand that there's other things happening in your life that you could have just had being cut off on the road 10 times and you're angry. They'll immediately think it's them. So you have to just let that disconnect for them and go, it's not you. Or even tell them, especially teens, they get it. Like, hey, babe, I've had the most crazy time. Just let me work it out of my system. How was your day? And then they're like, oh, it's not me. And then they can move on. They're not always self-analyzing, like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Teens are very self-absorbed in that way. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just how they're wired. And if you can eliminate that as a mom, it's easy to do. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, magical. So let's talk about this adult time and how important it is to us being great parents for our kids.
Well, when we were in Germany, I was very much that parent who I was everything. I was the wife, the mom, this, all that stuff, the school volunteer and this, and then the baker of the cupcakes for this. And I just never stopped and I was exhausted. And I never thought to like not have my kids with me. And I always thought, I'm a good mom always has her kids with her. And then we moved to Germany, and the German culture taught me a great lesson. And it was that they don't have their kids with them all the time. They absolutely don't. Even if you go to Oktoberfest, it's open for families. It's a beautiful place for families the whole day. And at 5:00, kids are out. Parents come back, they get a sitter. So that is something that I was like, we go to a restaurant at night. And of course, I'd have my kids in tow. They would be the only kids in the restaurant because kids stay at home. And with teens, it's a little different. And then if we would go skiing, the parents would be on one slope and the kids would be on another slope. And I really realized that it's okay to take time out, and it's okay to have time with your partner, and it's okay to have that beautiful family time. So the German people, the culture was very much family time, big time on family time. All shops shut down at 1:00 on Saturdays. Everything was closed on Sundays, so you could have family time. So they were very big on family time. But then they also had adult time. At nighttime, it was adult time. It was not a place for children. Children were at home at night. And then they had children time where they would encourage children to go and do things by themselves. They would buy the bread, get on their bikes, go buy the bread. They would go to school, walk to school by themselves. They would, like I said, on the ski slopes, they would be with an instructor at the age of 3, 4, 5, teenagers on their own without mommy always there. So it really took away this helicopter vibe that I probably had starting up. And just realizing, you don't have to be everything all the time. And I think it exhausts parents so much to think that you have to be there. It's actually better not to be there all the time, because you're giving your children resilience, you're giving them independence. So that was a big lesson that I truly needed and valued at the time.
And I think that our teens are watching us so much. And so if we can model the self-care of taking time for ourselves and not overgiving, then that's very valuable for them as well.
I think teens watch everything we do. You can say everything you like. It's like, how many times do you tell your child, I know I'm guilty of this, get off your phone. And then I'm sitting on my phone scrolling. Or go to bed early and then I'm staying up late, or, and they watch everything you do. And a lot of the times we never do self-analysis as moms enough. You should eat healthy. And then I'm in the chocolate cupboard sneaking, a handful of M&Ms. So it's really, as they see it all. And I think that sometimes the hardest thing is to watch ourselves and go, oh, what are we What are we doing? Are we walking the talk?
Beautiful. So another thing that I find, back to stories for a moment, is as I'm coaching moms on opportunities that I'm seeing for them to tell their children stories, they're often really resistant to this idea, even though it can be incredibly valuable and really communicate messages in new ways. Can you give some strategies to make storytelling easier for parents?
Yeah. So, one of the easiest stories that you can tell your children is their own story, the origin story. And this is a huge one because it can grow and change as they grow. I'm going to talk about teens now because that's what we're focusing on now. And it's different with littlies. But as a teen, they don't know how they came to be, how they were wanted, how they were the birthday, the post birth time, and the toddler times. That's about 5 or 6 years that they have no recollection of. They don't remember it. So you basically have a teen who, they say 15, they only have 10 years of memories, but they have 15 years of life. So it's really a great time to fill in the blanks. And these are stories that you can tell just from your own memory. And you can make it funny with teens. I love telling the birth story to teens because you could really get into the juicy, sassy bits. When they're little, you make it like fairy tales and, all of that. Like once upon a time, there was a mommy and daddy. But when they hit teen years, you can like throw your partner under the bus a couple of times and be like, yeah, well, when I was in labor, he did this and this and this. And you can start the banter and then they're like, and tell them their story. How did they come? Who was there? What happened? What was the funny things? What was the traumatic things? And I'll talk about the traumatic things in a minute, but letting them know the origin. And even in Hawaii here, they say, if you don't know where you started, how do you know where to begin? And they're very much big on this. And I learned this from a woman in Scotland. And later I realized that so many cultures hold this story as a big part of raising a child. And we forget that a lot of the time, that people need to know how they started, where they began. Was your kid someone who screamed all the time and never slept? That's a story. How tired were you? They don't know how many hours you rocked them and held them and bounced them. And, a couple of years, a year ago, I was doing an interview. Oh, I'm sorry. I was doing an interview with a man who was 25. He worked with teens and we were chatting about this. And he said to me, I've actually never asked my mom that story. So he went off the interview and he emailed me a couple of days later and he said, the heading was, the healing was enormous. And he said that his mom told him her story. She was a single mom and he had never asked her about his first years. And she sat him down and she told him everything. And he said for years, he's been bitter at her, angry at her, didn't feel like she did enough for him, and all these negative feelings towards his mom. And he said they both sat there in tears at the fact that he didn't know the circumstances. He didn't know what actually was going on. He didn't know what happened. He didn't know how much time, love, care, and energy his mother put into him. And he said that this forever will change him and his mother's relationship. He said, we will never be the same after that conversation. So the enormity of the story goes much further than just a fairy tale to a little child. Every child wants to belong to something amazing, something solid, and every child needs a story to begin from. So this is something that moms can just share, even in little tidbits like, did you know you did this? Or I've got a funny memory of you doing this, or you're exactly the same as you used to be. Oh my gosh, when you were 2, you used to do the same thing. Let me tell you about it. And you just drop it in, or you can sit and do the whole story. I sometimes do that on the night before their birthday. They go, Mom, stop. And I'm like, no, I have to tell you your story. And they hate it. They act like they hate it, but they love it. So it's just how you want to do it. And it can just be organic and natural, but they need to hear it. And I think it's a big key component that we forget to tell and share with our families, with our children.
Excellent. Excellent. And then there's also value in other kinds of stories. Mickaleen Ducliffe, I can't help but kind of put you guys in the same category because she wrote about parenting in like a global, and through her travels and her global experiences. And she talks about this refrigerator monster. And I use that as a great strategy, and it's fun and it's enchanting. and it helps us avoid this power struggle over the refrigerator door. So is there space for other kinds of stories? And I hear the family history, and I find that that's incredible, an incredible way to just like fill in some of who a child is and give them some gravity for their experience. Can you give us some other strategies for telling maybe different kinds of stories? They don't necessarily need to be like magical or anything like that, but can you give us some context for other ways to use story?
Yeah. Well, for example, you can just not even have to tell them stories and just allow them to be curious in that time. So you can, I think a lot of the times parents forget how it feels to be a child. You were there once. Everybody
Mhm.
at some point was at the stage that their child was at. So if you need to find something, go back to your childhood and try to remember how it felt. How did it feel to be a child? And you think about things like Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about this all the time. And he talks about how children are made to be curious until the parents have made them, or teachers or schools and life just takes that curiosity away. So they were like, go back to that curious mind and go and see how it felt to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've been all the ages your kid has been. You should be able to remember some feeling that you felt. And then you can talk to them from that angle. Tell them stories of your time at that age. And it really is
Mhm.
a very easy thing. And then on that, allow them to be curious. Don't stop their curiosity. I had a mom that did one of my courses once, and I was talking about this. And she came on the next day and she said, I just had the most incredible experience with my son. And she said it was bedtime, and he was a teen, and she was doing the dishes. She had just loaded the dishwasher and she was trying to get everyone, off for the night. And he came through and he said, Mom, can I open the dishwasher? It was running. And she said she paused and she thought her normal self would go, no, go upstairs and go to bed. And she said, yes, you can open the dishwasher. And he opened it, and he was all curious about how a dishwasher works. He thought the water filled all the way to the top, and if he opened it, all the water would come out. And she said that they both sat and they worked through how a dishwasher works. And he was so curious about the heating and the water and how it comes and where it goes. And she said, that wasn't a story, but it was just allowing your child to be curious and being curious with them. So, that's also something that we can do, is just to allow them to be curious. Say yes when it's appropriate. Obviously, sometimes it's not. You have to get on with life. But when you can, don't say no, say yes. And then go down the rabbit hole with them. And then explore that curiosity of that age and that how their brains are working with them is also very bonding, and it's very cool to do. So, that's definitely just taking the opportunities that you have every single day.
Yes, curiosity, wonder, giving our children their history because our history is their history. These are all beautiful components to a rich childhood experience. Just all phenomenal, phenomenal pieces to take forward. So I always like to talk to people that we bring on about value, and teaching children their value. And they all come into this world vulnerable and needing our love and needing our experience to create that value for themselves, for their own self. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your work communicates to children or teens their value in the world and their self-worth?
So in one of my courses, I actually work on this of what are your values in your home? Do you know them? If I asked you right now, could you spit them out to me? And a lot of people don't know. They know that they have values, but they don't know what they are. And a lot of the time, your partner's values might be different to yours. It probably are, because you're two different people. But to come onto the same page and to decide what your values are is really incredible, because it makes your parenting much easier. Firstly, you have two parents working towards the same goal, whether you're together or not. And you can always use values as a funnel to all the lessons you need. So I'll share with you, our family's values are kind, strong, and smart. That's it. That's all we say. Even when we meet a friend, is he kind? Is he strong? Is he smart? And I mean it that as in kind to yourself, kind to other people, kind to nature. So whenever my kids are like, I'm stupid, I'm like, no, that wasn't kind to yourself. You don't speak to yourself like that, because that's not kind. What are our values? One of our values is kind. Or if they say something bad about somebody else, That's not kind. So you always bring them back to the value. And if all of you are doing that, if they throw trash down or whatever, that's not kind to the environment. What are our values? Our values are kind. One of them is kind. And then strong for us, it was strong of mind, body, and spirit. So how are you always being kind? How are you being strong to your body? Are you learning good nutrition? Are you working out? Are you, especially as teens, this is a great time to teach them about being strong physically, strong mentally. Where are you mentally? Are you strong mentally? And then the other one is smart. Are you book smart, street smart, emotionally smart? So you can bring these lessons into your values at all times so that you're not just spewing out this, that, the next thing. You can always bring it back to something. So you go, is it part of our kind, strong, smart? Out of that, it doesn't matter because I can bring anything into our values. I can make anything fit into the values. And every morning when my kids go to school, my husband shouts out, what are the values? And every morning they shout kind, strong, smart. And it's very bonding to a family to know what your values are. And in my courses, we actually explore this with either on your own or with your partner. And then we learn how to use that into our family. And it's a big deal to know because when they leave in their 20s, and if they leave with just some really core values, it builds a strong character, it builds a strong person. And I must add, I have never, in all the courses I've done, and I've taken hundreds through my courses, I've never had anybody have the same values, one family to the other. Never. I've still yet to see in a group anyone with the same three words. Never. And some people add 4 because they just can't decide. But it's crazy how you don't realize how different your values are to the person sitting next to you. And as long as they're good and kind, there's no reason that you can't filter something into a lesson in the day into those values. So I use values a lot, and I think it's very powerful.
Excellent. And I hear this piece about the values, and I feel like it is so important in terms of sort of the structure of the person that is going out into the world to become their own self and find out their identity, is that they have this sort of foundation to really study them and to make them feel when things aren't going as well, or sort of a really solid lens to be looking through when they are experiencing the world. So it's really, really powerful to give that to your kids.
Yeah. And you start that early and it gets very ingrained and it's just positive. It's not bad, but you can use bad things too. When they act up, you can be like, you are not following the values that we're trying to instill in you, and you keep on bringing it back.
Okay. So I know that some of our listeners have really resonated with what you've had to share with us today, Joanne, and thank you so much for all of this beautiful insight. I'm so excited about really digging into this piece around telling stories and implementing it into my own life and my parenting story. Can you share with us how our audience can get in touch with you? I think you have a free gift for them and a couple of other really beautiful opportunities to connect and learn more.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely offer anyone who would like to chat more about this 30-minute session with me, and they can just sort of check in, see what they're doing. I'll ask them a couple questions and maybe drop some seeds and let them go and think about some things that maybe they haven't considered. So you just have to email me for that. I'll give you my email in a minute. And then also I have a cheat sheet for how to tell stories. A lot of people don't know where to begin. So I have a little cheat sheet on ways to tell your child their story. So I can also offer them that, and just have to email me. My email is Joanne, Joanne at yourpassporttoparenting.com. So that's the name of the book that I have. And my book is available on all online stores worldwide. You can get it there. Or if you're a really busy mom, it is on Audible because no mom's really got time to sit down.
So true. So do you read the book on Audible?
I do.
Excellent. Yes, I thought that was the case. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked.
They wouldn't let me get anyone else. They were like, nope, you're reading it.
Beautiful. So Joanne reads you the whole book, and be sure to rate it and give it 5 stars as well when you listen. Yeah. I'm sure there will be lots of beautiful nuggets for you and your family. Well, thank you, Joanne, for being with us today. Thank you so much for all of the beautiful support and
I also
for being
put a
with
lot of
us.
free content out on social media. So I'm on all the socials, and I'll leave them with you. It's just Your Passport to Parenting or Joanne Holbrook is on all the socials.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Mhm.
My pleasure. Hello again, friends. Thank you for listening to the Best Mom Ever Parenting Teens podcast. We know how much it hurts to feel separated from our kids. And we want teens to know just how much love and support is available to them so that they can be successful. If you know that you want to parent with courageous inner calm because it is the best way to create a strong and lasting relationship with our kids and teens, then I have a really special opportunity for you. Pre-registration is free and open now for the 3 keys to restoring trust and connection with your unique teen masterclass series. Master series. Yes. All right. You are going to discover the proven strategies to get out of struggle and into trust, confidence, and happiness with your teen. You're going to learn how to get the conversation with your teen flowing, discover ways you may be sabotaging your relationship, deepen connection with your teen so that you can feel heard and respected, and open up communication so that you can feel confident that you know what is up with your teen. So we can't wait to see you there. We're really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sign up in the show notes. There is a link. All right. See you there.